Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers here to talk Seahawks football. We're into our third or fourth session on evaluating the roster and position groups. We're to the tight end position, and fun show ahead. Lots to talk about. Welcome in, Keith. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's been an interesting week here since last time you and I talked. Lots of stuff going on. You probably couldn't see it down there, but the sky decided to light up with greens and reds and stuff up in this part of the world. We had all sorts of northern lights reaching this far south. So kind of a pretty once in a forever thing.
It was actually, it reached clear down here to like Flagstaff and Prescott area, a little north of here. And but I did not see anything. I was aware. I saw it on all the Facebook stuff and online, and it was pretty spectacular. I mean, that's crazy. I don't recall seeing that when I grew up, in Seattle. I just don't recall seeing anything like that.
No, this is the first time I've ever seen it without going like way off the coast and, where there's no light pollution and you can see forever. It's very abnormal for it to reach this far south. So
officially, Keith, we are in the doldrums of summer, as it relates to this team and team news and so forth. We've got, some mini camps and all that kind of stuff, but really there's not much coming out of there. As far as it's just guys working out essentially on, not running any positional drills or not really doing any plays or anything like that. And if they were, they wouldn't be open to the public. And so really it's just guys checking in after the draft and off season, getting into their playbooks for the first time and having the coach getting to know some of these guys in person. But nonetheless, we've got a lot to talk about as far as the position group stuff. We're going to go through the next several weeks and go through the entire roster. This week it's tight ends. We don't have a huge roster at the tight end position, Keith. And so I'm not sure exactly how long this show's going to go, but we can probably make up some stuff if we want. But who do you want to talk about first?
One of the things, when we look at this is, I went back and looked at how Washington used their tight ends last year. And honestly, it was pretty underwhelming. Jack Westover, 46 receptions, 433 yards, which is 9.4 yard average. He's the only person of note. The second one had 16 receptions. The other two that played had 4 and 2. There's not a lot of tight end usage in the passing game there. Westover didn't get drafted. He's actually with the Seahawks as an undrafted free agent. And so I'm just looking at this and I was like, I don't know what to expect from this particular group. Having watched a couple of games, I was expecting more. And when I looked at this and saw those numbers, I was like, that's a lot lower than I expected.
Well, 46 passes and 43 yards. That's not too bad. When you take a look at the entire tight end class overall, even guys that were drafted, those numbers stack up pretty decently. The thing with Westover is he's undersized and he's 25 years old in June. And so he wasn't going to get drafted. I think that, he may have gone in the 7th round or something like that, but I think it's a great fit for him to come on to the Seahawks. He's well known by this staff. He's got an opportunity to maybe stick on the roster since the roster itself is fairly light. Noah Fant, AJ Barner, we just drafted Pharaoh Brown. After that, Tyler Mabry's been hanging around for a while. Brady Russell last year took a bunch of special team snaps, but didn't see any time on the field really. and then you've got Jack Westover. I would imagine they'd probably sign somebody else, but really it's probably going to be Fant, Barner, and Brown heading into the season. Jack Westover's got a real good chance to stick on the practice squad or somebody like him. It wouldn't surprise me if they find another big body guy as a blocking tight end option at the back end of the roster or on the practice squad too, because really when you take a look at what Washington was doing, they just do a lot of motion offense. They do run a lot of pass attempts and so forth at Washington. They led the nation in pass attempts. But when they run a lot of outside zone. They like 60% of their play calls, running plays are 57% outside zone, over the tackle or outside of that. So the blocking tight end is going to be instrumental, I think, to this offense. But you'd mentioned, they've out of the top 5 reception leaders at Washington, I thought 2 of those were at tight end. I could be wrong.
No, I listed out all of the. I'm looking at the college football reference site, and that's the list of.
It may be personnel dependent. Obviously, they had a trio of wide receivers there at Washington that were very successful. So do we, but Washington only used 12 personnel, which is 2 tight end sets, 17% of the time. 1 tight end, 3 wide receiver, 11 personnel, almost 80% of the time. So that really does give you pause for a second, like why Fant re-signed, for example, for what he did a couple of years, $21 million to be the featured tight end in an offense that really isn't maybe going to feature a tight end. And we'll just have to see it. Like I said, it could be personnel dependent, and Noah Fant probably better than any tight end that Grubbs had a chance to work with in the past, or at least at the University of Washington. And they may incorporate him more into the passing game. I think that there's a real good chance of that, I think, as well. I mean, Westover, you mentioned, had 43 receptions. I don't think that's too far out of line with where Noah Fant could be this year, maybe even 50, 55, depending on how successful they are in converting third downs and stuff.
So if you go back the previous year, which is also under Grubb as the offensive coordinator, Westover led the team, led all the tight end room with receptions at 31. And Culp was second with 29. So combined of, 60 receptions by the tight ends. The numbers aren't big. They just aren't. And it makes me wonder a little bit, but it also kind of maybe tells us the story of why, instead of going into the year with 3, good tight ends like the team had last year, that they're okay with going into it with 1, a journeyman backup and a rookie, and letting it play out, because maybe they're they're going to run with it, but they're not going to feature it. And so it's not quite as big of a deal.
Yeah. Like I said, I think Noah Fant has a chance to do 45 or 50 receptions this year, probably 600 yards. And, they probably love to see, 7 touchdowns. Now, that's all going to depend too, like I said, on moving the chains, keeping the offense on the field, keeping the defense off the field. It all needs to kind of work together. I'm anxious to kind of see that, and I want to see what adjustments he makes. He's going to need to make a few adjustments to his offense to adapt to not only our own personnel, but to the NFL in general. And some of that's going to come at the tight end position. I will say, though, that they do a lot of, tight ends in the backfield and moving around in formation and so forth. And maybe even using a couple of these guys, Barner and Farrell Brown in particular, as H-backs or fullbacks in this offense, just to kind of provide some extra blocking. Farrell Brown, though, is an interesting guy. Last season, he finished with the 9th best overall blocking grade among tight ends, but he also had when he was targeted. He was one of the most efficient tight ends out there. I think he only had 12 targets, but he caught 11 passes for 200 and some odd yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, small sample size.
Small sample size, but you've got to, I don't think as a defense you have to pay attention to him too much, but I think periodically they will look to him. Then AJ Barner, 6'6", 251. I thought, while he probably wasn't a top 3 or 4 tight end in this draft class, he was right there at 5'6", picked about where I expected him to go in the draft. And based on the fact that we really needed another blocking tight end, especially one after this season, Farrell Brown's only a 1-year deal, I thought that was a pretty decent pick. What do you think of the upside of AJ Barner, Keith?
Oh, I like the pick of AJ Barner. I think, especially in this offense, since they play so much, 11 personnel, with one tight end and one running back, you're going to need a guy that can block, and be that, sixth offensive lineman when you're running outside zone, because you got to pick up that extra body on the play side. And that's where a guy like AJ Barner is going to come in, is because he's a really nice blocker. I mean, it's going to be a thing as far as like, okay, how do they get the guy they spent all the money on the field if Barner is getting all the reps because they want to use him as the run blocker. So we'll have to see how that goes. But overall, like, I like Barner in that role. I think that, I mean, it would have been nice to have Will Disley back in that role, because we know he can block. He's an elite blocker, but Barner has kind of that same mentality, and you look at his tape, he can block pretty well. So I'm
the only way that I think that they run, I don't see them running any less. They ran a lot of 11 personnel last year, but they also ran a lot of 12 personnel in Seattle's offense. At the University of Washington, it was opposite. It was 80% 11 personnel. But I see them running Ryan Grubb a little bit more of 12 personnel in the NFL, particularly early in the season when our run blocking, our pass blocking is not going to be completely set yet. He's going to still need to try to figure that out. We've at least got a new right guard, potentially, obviously a new center, and then a new left guard that's not new to the league, and Tomlinson. I think that's going to take a little bit of time to gel, and we still don't know where Abe Lucas is at with his knee completely. Sounds like he's going to be set, which is great news, but nonetheless, it's going to take a minute for that offense, and they're learning a new offensive scheme, blocking scheme, the whole thing. So I see, some help on the outside for sure. Farrell Brown's going to be in there initially, and then AJ Barner's going to work in there. But you're right. Where does that leave Noah Fant? And I don't see him being left out. I mean, he's one of the best options.
Yeah, he will. I don't see him being left out either.
On the field. So you're going to run 12 personnel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, I'm looking at snap counts from last year for Farrell Brown, and there's not a lot here to work with. I mean, he didn't play much. I was
shocked actually that they let Disley go for that contract.
Yeah, he's the third tight end. Hunter Henry was the starter until he got hurt for the last 3 weeks. Mike Gesicki was the guy getting all the snaps. There's a couple of weird weeks where, Brown got a lot and Gesicki didn't, and I would have to look to see if Brown or if Gesicki got hurt in those. But even, once Hunter Henry went down, it was the Mike Gesicki show with Farrell Brown playing the backup. So, I don't know if we are overthinking him, because clearly, I mean, that was a bad football team, and he had a hard time getting on the field for a bad team.
Yeah, but I mean, you got to have somebody. I mean, unless AJ Barner's just ready to go out of the gate.
I know.
Noah Fant is not an inline blocker. He's not going to do a good job for you. I think AJ Barner's going to be the best blocker on the team. I mean, Farrell Brown's going to be the best blocker, but as the season goes on, that could flip.
I think Barner's going to be the better blocker, but maybe not, you're right. Maybe not right away, just in terms of knowing where to go and how to get to, knowing your spots and that kind of stuff. But Um, yeah, I think that Barner's going to get his as a blocker, and you're going to see Fant in there a lot. And I think that might be the rotation unless somebody gets hurt.
Right. Yeah, I know. It's kind of, I don't know. I'm not completely disappointed because obviously we've got a really nice wide receiver room. But I think that the tight end room is diminished compared to the last few years. And I don't know really what to make of that.
Last year, the tight end room was really, and in fact, it was the same the last 2 years. It was a really nice group. I mean, you got
but underutilized.
Noah Fant as the headliner. You got Will Disley, who's one of the best inline blockers at tight end in the league, and then Colby Parkinson, who's just such a unique talent with his height and ability to run and that. But yeah, the team just didn't utilize him much. They did a lot. They played a lot of like 13 personnel, which means, one running back and 3 tight ends. But then they didn't get much out of it. They were really low on third down conversion. So they had a lot of drives stall. And so they just didn't get a chance to, extend drives, have more plays where I think you would have seen more receptions overall if the offense had just been more efficient. But even during games, it was rare that you went through a game and felt like the tight ends were a big part of the game plan. There's just a couple of games where, it felt like when you're watching it, like they actually wanted to get the tight ends involved, which is one of the problems I had with Shane Waldron. Like he had this great resource and just never used it.
And we just didn't convert, enough on third down to really kind of get a good feel of what the offense potential could have been. It just didn't happen for whatever reason, whether it was tight end use or blocking or whatever, just didn't have any consistency throughout the year, throughout games, no identity, no tight end identity for sure. I mean, it was just kind of a hodgepodge thing. I think that, you kind of really pay attention to the roster, the way it's constructed in the tight end room. And you can kind of see that the priority is just not going to be there. I mean, Noah Fant, that's it. As far as a guy that can catch the ball and even threaten at the middle of the field or down the seam or anything at all. And then you got a couple of guys that might be able to catch the ball for you, but one guy's completely hasn't taken a single snap. And then Farrell Brown's been underutilized his entire career for a reason. And then you got a bunch of practice squad guys. So that's it. That's going to be the tight end room. I mean, what else can you say?
Do you think that they're not done and that sometime during training camp, a move will be made to break a salary cap casualty kind of thing?
Is it a priority? I mean, maybe, if there's an opportunity position guy available out there, but boy, they would have solved this, I think, a little better prior to the draft and maybe even in the draft if that was really like important to them.
Well, I mean, they spent a 3rd round pick on a tight end.
Right. But they got the best blocking tight end in the draft. They didn't get the best. I
guess it wasn't a 3rd round, it was a 4th round pick, but yeah.
Yeah. They didn't get a hybrid guy that can do everything.
They got a guy who could block. They got a Will Disley replacement. And that's,
but if Noah Fant goes down with an injury, I mean, what do you got?
Jake Bobo. I mean, honestly, like you're right. I mean, it comes down to they clearly aren't putting putting that as a priority. They know they need to have someone block. They want to have a guy that can do stuff, but this is not a team that is setting themselves up to go out there and, run with a bunch of tight ends, go, 2 tight ends or 3 tight ends and run power. They're not built that way.
This is one of the things
they're going to spread teams out with wide receivers.
Honestly, this is kind of one of the things you point to if you're kind of a skeptic, a little bit, is that the team is in a rebuild mode and that they're not really looking to win this year. They're looking to compete, but they're not really looking to advance in the playoffs and do any damage. Because really you're looking at even, if you wanted to improve your run game, you've got a draft pick who hasn't taken a snap. And then you've got Farrell Brown to help you block. And then in the passing game, you've got one tight end out of three that's a proven guy that can really make a difference in the passing game. So it's one of the worst tight end rooms in the NFL, in my opinion, because you can't do either really well. And if you're one injury away from just being completely lackluster and unable to affect a game at all.
So if you
is that too harsh?
I mean, it kind of, but because I think it's all about how they want to do things. I think what they're trying to do is to spread teams out. Like, why would you run a bunch of tight ends when you have one of the best wide receiver rooms in the entire
Because
NFL?
You're still trying to run a deception game at the end of the day.
You're better off to get better players on the field. If you want to throw the ball, would you rather have Colby Parkinson out there or Tyler Lockett?
It really depends on if Abe Lucas can block. If Abe Lucas is hobbled at all and he's just kind of 80%, we need a guy. I mean, we need a guy to help him out.
They have a guy. Between those two, one of those two will be healthy and ready to go. So they'll have a guy who can block. But they, when it comes to as actually being a receiver, I think they're going to spread teams out. I think they're going to go with 3 and 4 wide receivers and spread teams out horizontally, and do it that way. And you don't necessarily need a tight end for that. I mean, you can. It helps to have a fan type because they come on the field. The opposing team sees 3 wide receivers and sends out the nickel, and then he sets that out wide, and it's like you went out there with 4 wide receivers and they've got the wrong defense in.
Yep.
But at the same time,
Grubb likes to do that too. He likes to send his tight ends out. Yep.
And so they can do that, but it's not the same as like when you're going in and you've got a tight end on each side of the line and both of them are going to release out, into routes. You're better off with the way Seattle's roster is constructed and how much talent they have at wide receiver, to have your wide receivers out there, not your tight ends.
So what you're saying, and my first question was going to be to you is, will Ryan Grubb feature Noah Fant in the passing game? And you kind of just gave me your answer.
I kind of don't think he's going to feature him. And honestly, I mean, I like Noah Fant. I think he's a good player, but to me, he's still your 4th priority of getting the ball to. I mean, you've got to get the ball to DK. He's just freaking too dynamic not to. Your JSN's going to get his, Tyler Lockett's going to get his, and then Noah Fant. Like, to me, he's the 4th option in the passing game. And it's a lot of that's because the wide receiver room is so good.
Yes, but in an offense where they want to throw the ball 500 plus times in a season, and which is a huge opportunity for Geno Smith. That's what they want to do.
Are you sure that's what they want to do?
I think that they don't want to slow the game down and run out the clock per se. I think they want to attack. They use the word, Ryan Grubb uses the word attack. They want to be in attack mode all the time. And so I don't see that. Now that doesn't preclude them from running the ball effectively. Yeah. But what I'm saying is if they do move the ball effectively, we could see 500 attempts for Geno Smith this year.
I don't know. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. Cause if you look at, the Seahawks or the Huskies did that last year under Grubb, but they had Penix under center and they had a really nice wide receiver room, and they didn't really have a great offensive line and very little at running back. And the Seahawks aren't built in the same way. They don't have the offensive line and they do have the running backs. And I think that and you go look at other years, pre-Washington with Grubb, he ran the ball a lot in previous years. So I think they want to be able to run it. I think they want to be able to do that. I think they're going to be more balanced than the 500 pass attempts. I don't think they're going to be Pete Carroll and slow the game down and try and have 4 possessions a game.
Yeah, if we're playing from behind all the time, we'll have 500 pass attempts. Let me say that.
Yeah,
but
do you think we're going to be playing from behind all the time?
So the
I hope
blocking
not.
tight ends in Grubb's offense definitely have an oversized role then if we're going to have a balanced attack and we're going to run the ball. Like, Washington passed the ball nearly 60% of the time. And it was almost like Seattle's offense last year, where we passed the ball 58%. And I think they want a little bit more balance than that.
The Seahawks were just so bad at it is really what it comes down to. That Geno couldn't get the ball out of his hands. And if he's not going to throw the ball quick, the offensive line wasn't good enough. And the offense stalled. And they went 3 and out, 3 and out, and 3 and out all the freaking time. And it was really frustrating. Washington didn't have that problem. And so you have to, kind of look at that. If Geno gets the ball out of his hand quick, the way Penix did, this offense could be really good. If he holds on to it like he did last year, this offense could be really bad. And we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, it all comes down to me.
Honestly, I think some of that was just the scheme. It was the way that it was designed up. You go look at all the pass, the routes that wide receivers are running on certain downs, and they weren't helping Geno out.
Well, there was a lot of guys open early that he was not throwing it to.
Yeah, but some of those, okay.
There were plays when it's like, okay, you've got guys running 4 verts as your passing concept. And that's not helping him out because that, takes a few seconds for them to get 20 yards downfield before they make any kind of break and get some separation. But there are other times when he's got guys, he's got Tyler Lockett on a slant for a 7-yard gain and he's looking right at him and doesn't throw it, pulls the ball down, waits for DK to get open and takes a sack. Like there were a lot of times when it was on Geno to get the ball out of his hand and he just couldn't do it.
Yeah. So what are your hopes, dreams for the tight end room this year, Keith? I
think what we're going to see is you're going to see Fant get, somewhere about where he's been the last 2 years, 45, 50 receptions, 800 yards, 700 probably on the high end, 6 touchdowns. After that, you're going to see very few receptions from the other 2 guys, but you're going to see maybe at the beginning of the year, Pharaoh Brown play a lot. And then later it's going to be Barner getting a lot of snaps, but not a lot of production in the passing game because they're being used as a blocker.
Do you think there's even an option for AJ Barner to establish himself as tight end number 2 in training camp?
Absolutely. I don't have enough faith in Pharaoh Brown to say that he's going to hold off Barner. I think Barner's going to be, he's going to have, I just think when it comes to snap counts or in the first couple of weeks that we're probably going to see Brown out there a little more. And then as the season goes on, it'll become AJ Barner's job.
Yeah, I see that too. That's pretty much all I had as far as talking points and what I wanted to cover in today's show. Do you got anything else? I think.
No, for me, like I said, when I went into this, just I went back and looked at the Husky like usage, and I was surprised at how little, given that they threw the ball more than anybody in the league or anyone in the nation. And the tight end, they had one guy who was kind of productive. That's it. Everyone else was not even, they didn't have enough stats to matter. Like 1 reception a game for their second highest reception total. Tight ends. I was really surprised at how little they used their tight ends.
They had 556 pass attempts last year, led the nation. Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting because, you could get very dynamic, very much just an attacking offense from Ryan Grubb and have the defense kind of, stay off the field and the offense just kind of churns it out and converts third downs and so forth. I can see that. But I think that that's a lower percentage optimal viewpoint than I think the defense the offense is going to have a hard time in the first half of the season. I think really kind of getting in sync and trying to figure it all out. Now I could totally be wrong, but and a lot of it's going to depend on matchups and schedule and so forth early and figure out, who we're going to face and so forth. But, yeah, I would be shocked though if like your prediction was off as far as usage, because they have too many weapons at wide receiver, and really outside of Noah Fant, that's all you've got at the tight end spot. So it'll be interesting.
I think they're going to spread teams out and use the wide receivers more.
Agreed. So the next couple of shows are offensive line centric. We've got an interior offensive line, and then we've got offensive tackle show. So that'll be fun to talk about that for sure. And you've got a couple of additional players to talk about and kind of research.
Yes. I've added a couple. So
are you happy with the investment in the offensive line this offseason in total?
I am actually. I think they've started to make that move. You know, they've got last year they got the two 2 years ago they had the 2 tackles. Last year they got a couple of interior guys. I'm a little higher on Bradford than I think the rest of the world is. I think he's got a chance to, you know what? He's not necessarily a great fit for an outside zone running scheme. So, but I like, they went and they used their second overall, the team's second pick in the draft on it for a guard. And they got a really good one. So, I'm concerned about center, but overall, I think that they're making a needed investment, trying to build a line and not just like go spend a bunch of money, throw some money at it and, have it be middling, but expensive. They're trying to build it organically. And I kind of like that.
Cool. All right, let's get out of here. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. The show is Seahawks Playbook Podcast on your favorite podcast platforms and our YouTube channel, and hit that subscribe button when you get to it. And we'll get together later this week and talk about interior offensive line guys and go from there. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.